Sheltered from the kitschy boutiques and quaint inns geared for tourists in New Hope, Pennsylvania, lies the elegantly landscaped compound of George Nakashima, America's preeminent woodworker, whose life and work embodied a simplicity and spirituality reflective of his ancestral Japanese homeland. It is here that his daughter Mira Nakashima Yarnell carries forth her father's vision while discovering and nurturing her own distinctive artistry. Nakashima is considered a pioneer in the movement to rediscover the values of expressiveness and individual craftsmanship in woodworking. And for over 20 years, Mira worked side by side with him, learning to let the form of each one-of-a-kind piece emerge naturally from the qualities of grain and texture in the unfinished wood. Nakashima died in 1990, and these days the family business is managed by Mira in partnership with her mother and brother. But beyond bottom-line concerns, Mira must balance the continuance of her father's legacy and the development of her own career. In 1992, she was asked to create a memorial to her father, a reading room in the James A. Michener Art Museum in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, secluded from the other galleries, a respite where visitors might pause to contemplate. Through this project, she has emerged as the fully realized architect and designer whose loving care and attention to the building of the room has resulted in a sanctuary described as the jewel of the museum.
It was clear to me that it was more a holistic approach that was needed in the Michener Art Museum, where we would certainly coordinate with Mira, but I would much prefer that the detail be a reflection of her philosophy, the Japanese culture, and to try to aspire to have the tranquility which we experienced while visiting the compound on Aquitong Road. I started to see various elements as opportunities, and Mira would point out some of the favorite details or aspects of various buildings that she thought might contribute to this ultimate result.
To me, when I first said I would do it, it was just another step in doing what I do. You know, I've done other architecture before, and I was happy to do something that was in tribute to my father and to his work and to his architecture. But to have it become, you know, a jumping-off point for my own career, I didn't even think of. I mean, if that happened, that was a happy byproduct. But when I first agreed to do it, I just thought of it as another project that I would enjoy doing and that I would like to make as beautiful as possible. There were, I mean, although it was an empty envelope, so to speak, there were quite a few givens. The dimensions of the room were already given, and the height of the windows and the configuration of the windows was already there. There was a door, and there was, I think there was even a compartment for the proposed video equipment to sit in, and Lynn and his architects had proposed a window bench around the edge, and I think that's because they had already seen the soul of a tree and thought that that was a good idea. So I started from there and improvised a little bit, and thought about the wall covering, and I liked the wall covering in the tea room and in a lot of the Kyoto tea rooms, so I thought if we could get that, that would be really nice to do. The wall material was called kyokabe, and it was traditionally used in Kyoto for tea rooms and traditional Japanese architecture from way back. It's not used very commonly today, but it is available, and we were able to procure some through our associates in Japan for this project. The shoji screens are also a very common element in Japanese architecture, and each of them is proportioned differently according to the window size. There is a traditional proportion which we followed fairly closely, but it's Japanese architects nowadays don't pay much attention to it because they use these huge sheets of shoji paper. In the old days they had little rolls that were 11 inches wide, and you had to proportion the slats accordingly, but it's no longer necessary. finding the actual materials for that was difficult. We happened to track down some Port Orford cedar for the shoji screens, which my father used most of the time when he could get it for the shoji. Here it's very dense and very hard and very aromatic, and it's a beautiful wood, and that's what we used for the shoji screens. The planks we used for the Michener room were once destined to be a dining table for Andy Warhol, and we were just about ready to put it into production when Andy Warhol died, so we still had the wood left, and now it's in the George Nakashima Memorial Reading Room. That is American elm, and it was a huge tree. The planks we have were 12 feet long by over 4 feet wide. The wood we used for the coffee table in the center of the reading room was from a Clara walnut burl from California, and it was one of those exceptional burls in which the wood is curly all the way through. Usually you get it on the outside here and there, but it doesn't go all the way through to the center and back again. And we had, I think we had 3 or 4 slabs from that exceptional burl, and we used them all, and there was 1 slab left, and having realized that they were all gone except this one really beautiful slab, Dad had written "not for sale" on it, and when we were asked to do a memorial room and memorial furniture really for my father, it seemed the most appropriate thing to use this wonderful piece of wood that was not for sale as a memorial to my father, and I designed a special base to go with it that's different than we've done before. The so-called mother post in the reading room is a functional structural element. It was designed as a steel post, I think, by the architect and engineer at one point, and I was studying the drawing and trying to figure out how to work around this post, which is sort of off one corner of the reading room, and asked Lynn if we could change that to a wooden post, and he was kind enough to send out his consulting engineer to check with me and make sure that the dimensions of that wood was big enough to hold up the corner of the room, and it met his approval. But it was a natural post. It came from the Nakashima property and was, as you can see, very free form and irregular, and we had to do a lot of hand work on it. The bark had to be cleaned out of all the little pockets, and all these little branches had to be trimmed off and sanded, and the cracks had to be filled, and it was a lot of hand work. I don't know if it's carved exactly, but it certainly has a lot of hand work. I think it took almost a week just to clean up the outside edges of that post, and then some to fit it in there. I think the most gratifying thing was to have it all come together at the end. It was kind of exciting seeing, when I came back from Japan, I was in Japan earlier this year when they were doing the plastering, and when I first came back, I looked at the plaster walls and I looked at the color scheme for the rest of the Michener Museum, and I thought, I don't know if this is going to work or not because it's so different. And then as the different elements came together and they finally put the shoji screens in and they got the grill work up, and then it was looking a little better. And then when they put the furniture in, it just kind of all came together, and that was what was great, that it actually worked at the end. You know, I had my doubts several times along the way.
Did they know where it would land as they held it in their hand? The story of life's seasons is the ballad that it sings. Our lives are marked and bound together by concentric rings.
I worked here for 23 years. 20 of those years I've been with my father. But since he passed on, I always feel that his presence is still here in the studio. And his presence is what guided me when I was doing that room. It was almost, maybe creativity is always this way, I don't know. But it was almost an unconscious laying of pencil to paper. I just, you know, sort of drew it up. I didn't actually think, you know, I want to have this kind of an impression and want to have this kind of a wall covering because it'll do this to people when they see it. It just kind of came. And we used wood, which Dad had collected. This one piece of wood in particular, which he said he was so beautiful he did not want to sell it. And I felt that not only was it a tribute to him, but somehow it was a continuation of his work. And it was, maybe that's why I'm not so concerned about making my splash in the world, because I feel like I'm just a continuation of something that my father started, and that his presence is here in the wood and in the work that we do. It's not that he's really gone, that as long as we can keep making furniture, he's still alive to me. And maybe that's weird, but that's what keeps me going.
God's eye alone one song. The story of life's seasons is the ballad that it sings. Our lives are marked and bound together by concentric rings. The story of life's seasons is the ballad that it sings. Our lives are marked and bound together by concentric rings.